Hey everyone, we have Munib here, one of the co-founders of Blockstack. We are actually transitioning to redefine the summit that is co-organized with Blockstack, Algorand, and Chainlink. So it'll be a really unique take on DeFi. And I'll let Munib take it from here. He'll be doing a talk on crypto assets anchored in Bitcoin.
Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm really excited for the Redefine Summit. First of all, a big shout out to Shannon from Blockstack that helped organize this along with Dystopia Labs as well. So today, I think the way to think about basically our involvement in the summit is that we are trying to take a deeper look into what's happening in crypto, and especially on the financial product side, and what are some of the core fundamentals that people should take a deeper dive on before the industry matures more and we see kind of like more developer traction and more types of financial products coming in. So today I am going to focus my talk mostly on kind of like the security of crypto assets, because at the fundamental level, you're trying to define these new types of assets on blockchains. And more specifically, I'm actually going to anchor the talk mostly around Bitcoin and why Bitcoin security might be actually a really good fit here. Before I move on, I have to give certain disclaimers. We are in this unique position at Blockstack where we have done a SEC qualified offering, and we do periodic filings with the SEC. So these disclaimers basically mean that this is not an offering. We're not selling anything here, and there might be like forward-looking statements in my talk that have nothing to do with Blockstack or the Stack's cryptocurrency. So at a broader level, I think the one of the reasons why I'm really excited and passionate about this area is that we're defining the next internet. Right? Like this industry collectively is working on basically defining what the next internet is going to look like. And there are really like two tracks here, right? So there is one side, which is the new crypto economy, all these assets, including Bitcoin and others, that are being created, that are replacing even typical fiat currencies or traditional banks and these new types of financial services that are coming online. And on the other side, I think the second track of the same technology is decentralized computing, which is kind of like the inverse of the Facebook and Amazon and Google, these big tech giants, where we are keeping all of our data with these data centers and large providers. And decentralized computing is kind of like the inverse of that, where users are in control. And the interesting thing over here is both of those tracks are actually powered by the same technology, the crypto networks. And I think sometimes people get confused between the two. I know that this summit today at Redefine is mostly focused on the crypto economy and the DeFi side of things. So I feel like this is getting more well established now that Bitcoin is the reserve cryptocurrency, or even at some point, Bitcoin might become the reserve currency. That is actually a very hard battle to win. So I think one of the reasons why you see Bitcoiners kind of like so passionate about Bitcoin and kind of like believing in it is that they can actually see the future kind of like unraveling slowly, where fiat currency, especially like I think this might happen initially in some developing world countries or countries that are not very stable, and people there don't trust the local government or the financial systems there, and they want to exit into a safer asset, which might be Bitcoin. But this is even happening in the US, where public companies now are diversifying their cash holdings into Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is emerging as really like this reserve currency. But I feel like what doesn't get talked about enough is the potential for Bitcoin as the foundational layer for the next internet. And I think this obviously, a lot of the work that we do touches this, but I feel like it's a very underappreciated quality of Bitcoin, and the money aspect of Bitcoin actually gets a lot more attention than the fact that the Bitcoin protocol can be the foundation of the next internet, and I'll kind of like explain more what I mean there. So I think let's go to a high level first, right? Like with all of these crypto assets, including Bitcoin or other DeFi products or any new asset that you're trying to create, fundamentally you're creating some sort of a digital representation of an asset, and that gets secured by a blockchain or it's anchored in a blockchain. So the security of that blockchain is actually critical to having an economy around these assets or new types of financial products and DeFi, right? So I'm going to pose a hypothetical question. Like this is, I don't intend to kind of like dunk on any of the projects, but this is more like a example to make a point, right? Would you feel secure if your crypto assets were defined on, let's say, Ethereum Classic that went through multiple deep reorgs and is under a 51% attack? I think the answer is likely no, right? Like if the underlying system is unstable and any basically malicious actors can come in and actually reorg the chain, meaning that they can redefine the order of data, then that kind of like kills the purpose of what blockchains are meant for, right? Blockchains are meant for establishing ownership. Or we can take another extreme example. One of the first forks of Bitcoin, Namecoin, I've actually directly done work on Namecoin back in the days. Would you define an asset on Namecoin today? And I think the answer, unfortunately, is no, because the entire market cap of Namecoin might be less than $1 million, right? So the project has kind of like gone off and is in a situation where there isn't kind of like enough economic activity happening there, and it's very trivial for someone to kind of like take over a small network like that, right? And again, going back to ownership, it's all about ownership. And I think Bitcoin actually has network effects because Bitcoin is so secure, and when you're defining an asset there, you need to have a very long timeline in mind. Like, is the underlying blockchain going to be around 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now? Because you're really defining the assets there that are valuable. And if the underlying system basically dies or something bad happens to it, then all of the assets defined on the system go away as well. So I think it's a very, very big fundamental thing to keep in mind when thinking about, should I define my assets on Bitcoin or should I define my assets on something else that may or may not be around 10 years from now? I love this quote from Satoshi Nakamoto. It's from one of the discussions he was having. And this is basically Satoshi's vision in terms of how these assets or these other blockchains could be built. Because Satoshi, out of all people, actually realized that Bitcoin's blockchain cannot do everything, right? You cannot have like smart contracts, like more fully featured smart contracts, or you cannot have like these new types of domain names or new types of financial products getting registered directly on Bitcoin, right? So the reason why I love this code is it actually perfectly defines the work that we are doing and Stacks is doing, because we are sharing in the security of Bitcoin, right? Our blockchain actually directly connects to Bitcoin for defining ownership, and yet we are in a way not starting off a separate disconnected network. So if you look at what's happening in the industry today, and I know we have speakers from all these different projects. With some of them, I've known these guys for a while, and I'm rooting for their success. And a lot of these people are trying to define new protocols, right? So there could be an argument today that is the center of gravity in crypto Bitcoin, or is it going to be Ethereum, or is it going to be some new protocol? I think those are roughly like the three kind of like big options on the table. And the way the Stacks approach is different is that we're clearly in the camp of Bitcoin. We believe that Bitcoin is going to be the center of gravity. Bitcoin is the base layer to which a lot of people, other than us, would connect as well, and it would use that. And Ethereum is trying to build ETH 2.0, whereas a lot of these other projects, again, I highly respect some of these teams like Algorand or Avalanche, Gunther, who's also speaking at the Redefine Summit. I think they're doing great work, but at a high level, I want to highlight what the difference is, right? Most of these projects are trying to build completely new protocols, whereas Stacks is actually trying to connect to Bitcoin, right? So and people can choose their trade-offs based on these type of design decisions. So this is our thesis. We actually think that the next internet is going to be connected to Bitcoin. Sometimes a lot of people have this argument that Bitcoin is kind of like a one-show pony. It basically just does one thing. That's actually a benefit. That's actually a quality. That is by design, because Bitcoin does not need to change that much. Bitcoin needs to stay durable. Bitcoin needs to stay secure. And a blockchain like Stacks can actually connect to it, and you can more rapidly innovate. You can have smart contracts and logic at the Stacks layer and still connect to the security of Bitcoin. And this is effectively what we do. I think one way to imagine this is that it's almost like a native bridge that you can have between Stacks and Bitcoin, but the technical details actually go a little bit deeper. That's just like a high-level kind of like analogy that you can think of. So why Bitcoin? Why are we doing this in terms of picking Bitcoin and basically connecting to it and having this thesis that we think that Bitcoin is going to win, right? And we want to be attached to it. The first thing is security. Just look at the Bitcoin hash power. Like what looks like a flat line between 2012 or 2013 was actually exponential growth itself. The world has actually never seen anything like this before. Like we as humans have never experienced a phenomena like Bitcoin before, right? And the network and the amount of hash power or security available on this network is just like mind-boggling. And I think that Bitcoin actually has network effects. It's entirely possible that protocols start collapsing into Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin has network effects. And if one network is so secure, Ethereum Classic is a great example. They were trying to run a separate network, but ran into a lot of problems there. Whereas Bitcoin is becoming more and more secure and stronger over time. And the second thing is, if you look at the crypto markets right now, it's a $350 billion total market cap, whereas $200 billion of crypto capital sits as Bitcoin. Right? Bitcoin is the asset that most Wall Street people or institutions are willing to actually hold on their books. Right? They might be willing to diversify into Bitcoin, but they would be a lot more skeptical when it would come to any other asset. Similarly, as I mentioned before, there are public companies now that are actually diversifying into Bitcoin. MicroStrategy is one of them. Recently, Square, Jack Dorsey announced that they're diversifying into Bitcoin. And I see this as a trend. This is going to keep on happening. The interesting thing is, today in the summit, we're talking about DeFi, right? DeFi is all about capital. It's all about where the capital is and how the capital is moving into these different smart contracts and financial products. Well, the biggest capital base is Bitcoin, right? So that's why we are seeing interest in people trying to wrap Bitcoin and trying to bring it to other blockchains. But that usage is like less than 1% of total Bitcoin right now. And I think to unlock the full potential of this market, you would have to bring smart contracts to Bitcoin instead of taking Bitcoin, wrapping it, and taking it to some other blockchains. So this is effectively what we do. Bitcoin is the reserve currency. It's the foundations that we anchor on. And Stacks is fuel for smart contracts. It's a separate blockchain, a separate layer 1 blockchain that natively connects to Bitcoin and effectively brings smart contracts and apps to Bitcoin. I had this tweet the other day. We recently announced the new brand for Stacks, and we have this X symbol. And the tweet version of this is that the X Stacks brings apps and contracts to be Bitcoin, right? And I think that is something that I feel is easy for people to visualize that this is what's going on and this is what Stacks does. So a little bit about the Stacks ecosystem. The Stacks 1.0 blockchain was a more limited version. It basically allowed people to register domain names or applications over there, but it did not have smart contracts. We got a lot of developer traction. We're really proud of our developer community. And you can check out some of these apps on app.co, but we got more than 400 applications built on top of Stacks 1.0. But Stacks 2.0 is our master design. It's not like a step improvement. It's like a 10x or a 100x improvement, because Stacks 2.0 is the main blockchain that we've been working on. and we're super excited about that. So Stacks 2.0 introduces full smart contracts. Stacks 2.0 introduces the ability to connect to Bitcoin, the ability for Stacks holders to actually earn Bitcoin from the protocol, and instead of just building apps, people can start building smart contracts as well. And we're already seeing that on our testnet. People are trying to build trustless token exchanges and so on. So one of the main things going into Stacks 2.0 is Clarity. So Clarity is a new programming language that we are developing in collaboration with Algorand. And over there, basically, Algorand was working on a similar language. And so the scientists from Algorand, Silvio Micali from MIT, and others, we saw that there was a lot of similarity between the design principles of what they were trying to design and the design principles of what we were trying to do. The main difference is that we really think that smart contract languages should purely be about correctness, like proofs of correctness, or you should have mathematical proofs for what a program can and cannot do. And if you align on those design principles, then the actual language, syntax, and other things you could actually collaborate there and try to join forces. So Clarity effectively just focuses on security. Like, we don't even have a compiler because we don't want to introduce any compiler bugs. There are safety conditions to make it easy for developers to express certain things. You can abort a contract if certain safety conditions are not met, and so on. But the main takeaway from this talk should be that, number one, everything starts with ownership, right? All these crypto assets are worth zero if the underlying blockchain fails, right? Or if the underlying blockchain is not secure. And I'm not talking about not secure in 1 year or 2 years. I'm talking about secure in 10 years, secure in 20 years. If you're trying to define long-lasting things, you need to define it on a blockchain that is going to be long-lasting as well. And we think that blockchain is Bitcoin, and all signs kind of like point to that. The second thing is that once you start moving hundreds of millions of dollars worth of capital, like crypto capital, into smart contracts, the only thing that's important at that point is the security of the language itself, right? So how secure the language is and how easy the language makes it for developers to build secure contracts is a critical thing. And those are the two things that we've been focusing a lot on. And we're really excited that this can potentially unlock the $200 billion of capital that is sitting passively in Bitcoin right now. And you can start turning this passive capital into actively deployed capital with Clarity and Stacks 2.0. We're really proud of our ecosystem. Some of you who are more familiar with our ecosystem know that we're going through this path to decentralization, where there are several entities like the Stacks Foundation, which is a nonprofit, or Damon, that is a Hong Kong-based entity, New Internet Labs, Freehold, and so on. And we're seeing not only these app developers, but dedicated entities in our ecosystem as well, especially leading up to the launch of the Stacks 2.0 mainnet. So our Krypton testnet went live. If people are interested in publishing Clarity contracts, or interested in mining on the network, or actually locking up stacks and earning Bitcoin, that functionality is actually live on testnet today. And our team is working really hard on the actual launch of the mainnet. If anyone is interested in knowing more about it, you should check out the testnet page to have more information. So this talk was basically trying to bring more attention to Bitcoin, because I feel like Bitcoin doesn't get enough attention when people talk about financial products or DeFi, whereas the bulk of the capital is actually sitting on Bitcoin. And people think that you cannot bring smart contracts to Bitcoin. You absolutely can. And I think that's the work that we're doing. Thanks a lot. You can always find me on Twitter at Munib, and I'll look at some of the questions. All right, I see some of the friendly faces here from our community. So one question is about Ethereum. I feel like Ethereum has attracted a bunch of developers, but I would say that the blue ocean of developers is outside of crypto, not even like outside of Ethereum. It's just outside of crypto. At max, I think at max there might be 100,000 developers in the entire ecosystem, and I think it's a stretch. It would be a developer that has been to a hackathon like once or something like that, whereas that is less than 1% of the total developers in the world, right? So I think if this is the new internet, or this is where the entire world's economy is moving, we're at a very, very, very early stage right now. So there's a question about what opportunities are available. I feel like there are more active bounties online right now in the Stacks ecosystem than even people who can actually claim them, right? Like literally, there are bounties on our testnet. There are bounties for community activities. There are all sorts of security things that people can help with. And I think one of the best ways would be to go to GitHub and search for like the tag good first issue. That is a great place to start. But in general, you can like join the community, the Blockstack community, and some of the enthusiasts in the community can actually direct you to the opportunities in our ecosystem. So I think I already covered the hackathons and the question. And the last question here is about our Reg A offering. Yeah, so I do think that securities regulations or regulations in general remain a risk for DeFi, because I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice, but our project has historically just taken a very careful approach to compliance and regulation, and that's why we did the first ever SEC qualified offering for the token distribution. Whereas if you look into the current trends in DeFi, I think people are kind of like just going ahead and defining a lot of assets or distributing them to a lot of people without, at least in my view, thinking very deeply about it. And that is something that I'm concerned about. And hopefully, some of the work that we have done and some of the future work that is coming out can help with this and can give entrepreneurs some paths to, hey, look, Blockstack did X and that turned out to be the right approach, and people can potentially follow that. Yeah, so I see a question about quantum computing. I wouldn't go into too much details, but at a high level, I'm not concerned about it. Like quantum computing is not going to happen like overnight, and if it happens overnight, you have much, much bigger problems on the planet than Bitcoin. Like your entire current existing financial ecosystem is going to collapse if a quantum computer comes online, let's say tomorrow, because all of your bank security, all of like other critical kind of like army infrastructure, nuclear reactors and whatnot, I would be much more concerned about those things than Bitcoin. And quantum computing is likely going to happen slowly, and there will be enough of a heads up to upgrade some of the kind of like encryption algorithms. And there are already quantum-resistant algorithms out there, so it's just like a slow process of like software upgrades that can help with that. I see a question from Brad around what does it mean to own your data and freedom of speech. I think like my mental model is, I think of the core layers of a network like the internet or Bitcoin as like a public network that needs to be free, right? It's a little bit like roads. Like anyone can drive on the roads, even criminals drive on the roads. We don't block the roads for anyone, right? So the heart of the network, the heart of the crypto networks needs to be open to anyone everywhere, right? And then people can actually make choices for themselves on the network. Like for example, I in my client or my browser can subscribe to some sort of a blacklist, or can choose to not see certain type of information, and I think that's the kind of model that I believe in. Yeah. So one last question I'll take is, there's a question basically around Bitcoin never did a token offering, and Is that a reason why we don't see a lot of innovation around Bitcoin? I think potentially maybe there's something there. I actually think that Satoshi launched Bitcoin in a very elegant manner. The way the mining works, it was actually pretty compliant with securities regulations, which is like amazing. Like think about like someone having the foresight back in 2008, 2009, how to launch a network that might even be compatible with securities regulations, right? Like stuff that people struggle with even today. So I actually think that yes, it's a factor that there aren't like these large treasuries sitting out there that is trying to fund the development of Bitcoin. But I don't think it's that big of a deal, because there are enough kind of like companies now or early Bitcoiners who tried supporting development or have invested in companies like Coinbase even, or Jack Dorsey started a internal team where they're just sponsoring Bitcoin developers, or they're sponsoring kind of like developers building on Bitcoin. Like I think if people want to build on Bitcoin, there's enough capital out there that would kind of like back them. I feel like the problem is more in the general perception that for somehow Bitcoin is not programmable, or Bitcoin is just money and it cannot do anything else, right? And I feel that is something that Stacks is trying to actively engage with and change that perception. Like for example, on our hackathons, developers can come and actually see how Bitcoin can become programmable, how you can have logic. Like for example, a Bitcoin transaction can actually trigger logic in a Clarity contract running on Stacks. And I think people need to see that, right? That people need to experience it to see that all these things are possible. And projects like ours or Lightning and others, I think they can help a lot in terms of changing that perception. Well, thanks everyone. I hope that you enjoy the rest of the talks. I'm interviewing Sergey from Chainlink as well, and there are a bunch of like really excellent talks. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Munib. This was really great. We're going to transition to our next talk now. Thanks again.